When it comes to gay rejection, everyone's experience is going to be different. Everyone's going to automatically have a different take on it. And depending on your circumstances, how you grew up, your family history, whether or not you've had trauma in your life, what country you live in, what part of the city you live in, if you live in the country, if you live in a small town, if you live in a religious community, if you come from a religious background, it doesn't really matter. Your experience with rejection is going to always be personal to you. First, it's going to sting. It's going to have an effect on you for the most part. You're going to feel it. If you had that feeling of rejection, there's going to be some element of pain or sadness or fear or something associated with that. Second, growing up gay, being a gay person in a world that is pretty much heteronormative in a lot of respects, is going to have its own historical context, and it's going to actually affect how you receive that rejection. But with that said, there is bound to be a certain element of skepticism and misunderstanding when it comes to rejection for gay men, because there's always going to be that element out there that is going to say, hey, that's not a big deal. And that could be coming from pretty much anyone. It could be a romantic partner, someone that you're meeting on a dating site. It could be a family member. It could be a friend that you've known for a long time. It could be somebody else inside the community. And it could be someone on social media. It could be a complete stranger. It could be a work associate. And it could even be you yourself. You could be that person who has that feeling of like, is this really a big deal? So let's dive into what I would consider the top 10 of most dismissive remarks when it comes to gay rejection. Number 10, you need to just get over it and stop dwelling on the past. Man, do I really dislike this one. As if your past is something that you can just kind of toss away, stick in the garbage somewhere, and forget about it for good. You know, your past is always going to be there, and it's always going to be something that you have to face and that you have to deal with. And so telling someone to stop dwelling on the past when it comes to rejection, whether that is a rejection that you've experienced from a romantic partner, a breakup, is someone that you met on a dating site that ghosted you, whatever it is, you know, to tell someone to stop dwelling on X is not going to really help the problem. In fact, it's really important to really face the things that are in your past. And I've recommended this many times is, for example, journaling, getting things out there and becoming self-aware of the things that bother you. And also, if you need to, really seek professional help. Getting over the pain of rejection is not something that can be rushed either. It is something that takes time, especially if it is rooted in things that have happened way back. You know, maybe sometimes more recent situations and scenarios may be able to get over them quickly or a little bit faster than normal. However, if there's something that go way back into the past, it requires some processing to deal with. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have hung on to things for a really long time, especially if the wound is gone very deep and the rejection seems to keep surfacing. It is something that in the past I've tended to nurse and really find that would block me and keep me from moving forward. And the more that someone told me I needed to get over it, the angrier I became. And getting around it just takes time, as I said. It just takes processing and just acknowledging and developing a sense of self-awareness. Number 9, there are bigger problems in the world. This I would put up there with, I don't know if you grew up and your mom or a caregiver or someone and had given you dinner and you were at the table and you just didn't want to eat those vegetables, and they would give you the guilt trip of like, well, the children over on the other side of the world are hungry, and what, you know, and I would say, well, you know, let's go deliver it to them. I feel like telling and making that comparison that there are other more pressing concerns and issues in the world is very minimizing to what you're going through personally. And that actually builds a lot of resentment and also causes you to suppress some things because there's that guilt response as well. Like, I guess, yeah, maybe there are other issues in the world that are going on. and maybe I'm not allowed to feel these things. And the answer, what I would say to that is you are absolutely allowed to feel those things. Actually, a couple ways that I would get around this for myself and have learned to cultivate a sense of perseverance through rejection is actually focusing on other people, not necessarily saying I'm worrying about what's going else, bigger issues in the world, but actually countering it with contribution. Find a way to contribute my skills, my learnings, the experiences that I've had, and share it with others, encourage others, that kind of thing. That's a way that you can say, hey, yeah, I've dealt with rejection, but this is the way that I'm handling it. And then also personally too, in journaling, you can actually start setting affirmations for yourself, giving yourself some positive remarks. There are certain ways to actually counter this as well when you come across that type of dismissive remark. Number 8, look on the bright side. It could have been worse. Okay, I think that's almost as bad as saying there are other problems in the world that are worse than what you're going through. Telling someone that you have to really look on the bright side, this one always got under my skin as well. It's like chin up, be positive, and you're dealing with something that's very personal. Again, in terms of say perhaps a breakup, and yeah, maybe you're someone who's actually broken up quite a bit, and maybe there are other issues that are going on, and you can't seem to keep a relationship solid. But you know what? There's no excuse to diminishing someone else's worth in that respect and making them feel like they're not valued in terms of like what they're going through, and that they somehow need to just buck up. And again, that goes along the line of suppressing your feelings. And you know what happens when you suppress and you try to cover over? You become a fake person. And this perpetuates another issue for a lot of men, is just they can't be genuine and they can't connect because they have to be on the positive side of things. Or have you been around somebody that's like always smiling, and they're always like, if they're religious, they're like, praise the Lord. And it's like, come on. Life isn't like rosy all the time. You just have to really face stuff. Number 7, you should really be used to this by now. Okay, like, I don't know what that is supposed to mean, but like telling somebody, hey, yeah, I'm constantly beat up all the time, I should get used to it. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. So telling someone they should just like be used to rejection by now, especially when it's something that's rooted in cultural belief about being gay, or actually having been bullied in the past, or having been tossed out by your family, all these kinds of things. These are things you just don't get used to, and you don't get desensitized to rejection. You find ways to actually persevere through it and look at it differently. But in terms of telling someone that you should be used to it by now, it's just not really, that just doesn't fly with me, not at all. And honestly, having a rejection experience continue on from childhood to adulthood can actually culminate in a lot of stress in somebody's life, to the point that it affects them, their body, and all this kind of stuff. So again, getting used to something, you don't want to actually get used to rejection or the feeling or the impact of rejection because of what it does to your body and how it feels in your mind. Your body will adapt, but it's not going to be like a healthy form of adaptation. You just really want to take the road where you're going to navigate through it, but don't try to get used to it. Number 6, stop overthinking it. Okay, stop overthinking rejection. Stop analyzing it. Okay, to a degree, yes, you can really become super introspective about something, but don't minimize someone's experience by saying, hey, you're overthinking that rejection. You may give them a perspective, and you may say, have you thought about this? I really see you. I can understand that that would really hurt. And perhaps maybe here's a way to look at it. But don't just tell somebody, that they're overthinking it, because anybody can say that they're overthinking anything. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that rejection is or isn't happening to you, or that your feelings are or are not valid. For example, a way to get around this is actually to reframe your perspective. And that is a very healthy way of thinking about it, but not like overthinking about it. It's really kind of strategizing how you're going to face it. And I feel like that's always been a really great tool that I've enjoyed using and that has been very effective in my life in dealing with rejection. We're halfway there. Number 5, you need a thicker skin. You need to develop a thick skin about this. I feel like this is something that like my grandma would say, and not everyone's grandma is like really how should I say it, warm and fuzzy, because I think my grandma, my one grandma, she was a little tough, and I feel like this is something that she would say. Or you would have a tough boss who would say you need to get a thicker skin, or if you're in sales you need to get a thicker skin. I mean, as if growing that sense of a hide or a protective armor is going to really help. Yes, having the ability to withstand and to develop a sense of resilience is actually a good quality, but telling someone they need to just like develop a thicker skin isn't really going into the issue of how you're facing the rejection. It's again just offering some kind of trite response that actually doesn't really recognize the person and doesn't like see what is going on and really kind of help you through it. And another reason why that can be kind of not always necessarily helpful is that it encourages sometimes suppressing your feelings and creating this quote unquote kind of stoic personality where you just become this like unapproachable person, this like ideal, this masculine ideal who doesn't feel anything, and which that can also create problems over the long run where you don't let anyone in, and then you have a problem with being vulnerable and being honest and being genuine and allowing others to connect with you. Number 4, you're too sensitive. This is something I've gotten a lot. Like another annoying thing. You're just so sensitive. You're so touchy. Okay, this has two sides to it. There's someone who just cries at the drop of a hat and it's really sad and they're just really like impacted really to the extreme when it comes to feeling rejection or any kind of rejection feelings. Then there's the other side where they're so always feeling slighted about everything. And I don't think that either of those is very attractive, but there is a middle ground where you can actually face rejection without necessarily feeling or expressing sensitivity in a way that can be off-putting. And there's a happy medium in that. And in terms of rejection, there is this thing that they call rejection sensitivity, where based on the things that you've gone through in your life, childhood, trauma, family dynamics, school, peer bullying, all that kind of stuff, where you can develop that over time, that sense of like, it doesn't really matter what type of rejection, you're just going to feel it. And those kinds of things, it's helpful to be reflective, but also if you have a history like that, it's really, really a good idea to maybe seek professional help to help you kind of parse those out and be able to face and to deal with them. Number 3, why are you taking this so personally? I can think of an example, that a lot of people can relate to when you're on an app or when you're on a dating site and someone doesn't respond to you or someone blocks you. And like, you don't know that person. They haven't grown up with you, and then after like 25 years, they decide to reject you. A complete random stranger. So why are you taking this so personally? Yes, that can be an issue, but it doesn't really help the situation. And I will say that there's always something underneath. There's always some kind of thing that's driving it. And you know what? Rejection is personal. It's always going to be unique to what's going on with you. It's always going to be related to something that's happened, the intensity of it and how it's rooted in something that's happened in your past. So yeah, you know what? It's always going to be, to a degree, personal. So to say, why are you taking this so personally? Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but it is personal. And that's something that you just have to face. Number two is really special because it's really talks more to relationships and dating. And that's just move on. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Or some of the other cliches that I remember. You'll find love when you're not looking for it. It's like it's gonna like come out of hiding or something like that and find you. And it's kind of like a cliche. It's a silly thing, and it again, it's just something that's like super dismissive, and it is something that it doesn't really take into account, especially, for gay men, dating is hard. Finding someone that you want to be with and who's not going to look at a million other guys before you, who's going to always be swiping left and never swiping right. He's just too busy, too distracted by all the things that are going on in the world and on his phone. And yeah, but it is hard. But you have to really process these things. And you know what? Every time that you come up with a trite saying that says, there's plenty of fish in the sea, or you're going to find that one when you're not looking, that means that there's no responsibility for you to look at it differently. There's no work that's involved for you because there is a trite saying that's going to cover it over. And again, you just have to kind of work through those things and deal with them. But it doesn't mean that, that's not valid to you. And another thing that having a saying like that does, it implies that relationships themselves are interchangeable. It means you can just switch this one out, swap this one in, and done, and you're done. There's no other work that's needed. And especially for someone who is marginalized around the fringe of society, like a lot of gay men, and especially if you're like a dual marginalized person. For example, if you're a person of color, or you're Asian, or you're Hispanic or Latino, there's always going to be a degree of extra that comes along with that. That, you know what, it's dismissive of the other things that are going on, the other factors that are involved. And number one on my list, it's just not a big deal. Everyone gets rejected. And like I mentioned before, rejection is personal. And there are degrees to which gay men in particular have a fair amount of intensity associated with it, whether that's backgrounds that they've come from, laws that are in place in their country, religious institutions that are always talking about them, things that are going on in the media, uh, politics, all kinds of things. There's always going to be a layer of stuff. And so to tell someone it's not a big deal that everyone gets rejected is really taking a bigger problem and trying to simplify it in a way that just does not fly, and it doesn't work. And the biggest thing I'm going to say is that in terms of finding your place and finding belonging, rejection is something that for gay men comes with its own flavor, just like it's going to be different for everyone. Any type of marginalized community is going to deal with this. But with gay men, this is our special flavor.